My name is Anne, and I am 58 years old. I have lived in a small town in Oklahoma where tornadoes are nothing new. I spent over 30 years in the same house, the one where I raised my only son. I never imagined a storm would take everything from me. But what I truly never expected was my own son shutting his door in my face when I needed him most. And I could not have guessed that a phone call from my past would change everything. Before I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if stories about family betrayal and finding strength when everything falls apart speak to your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. This is a story about losing everything and discovering that sometimes the people we forgot about are the ones who remember us the most. Trust me, you will want to hear how this unfolds. For most of my adult life, I was an elementary school teacher. I retired 3 years ago after 32 years of shaping young minds, teaching children how to read, how to add numbers, how to believe in themselves. It was a good career. It gave me purpose. But when I hung up my teaching hat, I found myself with a lot of quiet hours and an empty house. The house itself was a 2-story wooden structure on the outskirts of Millbrook, Oklahoma. My late husband Harold and I bought it 32 years ago when our son Derek was just 2 years old. Harold fell in love with the big oak tree in the backyard. He said it was the kind of tree where a boy could build a fort, hang a tire swing, and dream about adventures. And that is exactly what he did. When Derek turned 5, Harold spent an entire weekend building a wooden swing and hanging it from the thickest branch of that oak tree. Harold passed away 10 years ago from lung cancer. He was only 54. The doctor said it was the years of working in the factory, breathing in chemicals that slowly ate away at his lungs. I held his hand in the hospital room when he took his last breath. He looked at me and said, "Take care of our boy Annie, and take care of yourself." Those were his final words. After Harold died, I thought about selling the house. It felt too big for one person. Too many rooms filled with memories that made my chest ache. But I could not bring myself to do it. Every corner of that house held a piece of my life. The kitchen where I taught Derek how to crack eggs without getting shells in the bowl. The living room where Harold and I danced to old country songs on our anniversary. The front porch where I sat every evening watching the sunset paint the Oklahoma sky in shades of orange and pink. The front yard was my pride. I planted tulips and roses along the walkway, tending to them every morning, with the same care I once gave to my students. The neighbors would stop by just to compliment the colors. Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down used to say my garden looked like something out of a magazine. I would smile and offer her a cup of coffee, and we would sit on the porch talking about everything and nothing. Derek, my son, moved to Tulsa 6 years ago. He got a job at an insurance company, something in claims processing. I never fully understood what he did, but he seemed to enjoy it. When he first moved away, he called me every Sunday evening. We would talk for an hour, sometimes more. He would tell me about his apartment, his coworkers, the restaurants he discovered. I would tell him about my garden, my book club, the latest gossip from the church ladies. Every month he would drive back to Millbrook and spend the weekend with me. I would cook his favorite meal, pot roast with potatoes and carrots, the same recipe my mother taught me. We would sit at the dining table, just the two of us, and it almost felt like old times. Almost. Because Harold's chair was always empty, and we both tried not to look at it. Then about a year ago, Derek met Crystal. Crystal was 28 years old, worked in marketing for some tech company, and had a smile that never quite reached her eyes. At least that is how I saw it. Derek introduced us at a restaurant in Tulsa about 9 months ago. He was nervous, I could tell. He kept fidgeting with his napkin and laughing too loudly at things that were not funny. Crystal was polite. She shook my hand, complimented my blouse, and asked about my garden. But there was something distant about her. She spent half the dinner looking at her phone, typing messages to someone. When I tried to ask her about her family, she gave vague answers and quickly changed the subject. The second time I met Crystal was when she and Derek stopped by my house to pick up some of Derek's old things. Boxes of baseball cards, his high school yearbooks, a few trophies from his swimming days. Crystal barely stepped inside. She stood by the door, arms crossed, looking around at my home like she was inspecting a property she might buy, but probably would not. After they left, I called my friend Martha and told her about the visit. Martha, who has been my closest friend since we were both young mothers, said something that stuck with me. She said, "Annie, some women see their boyfriend's mother as competition. Give her time. She might warm up." I tried to believe that. I really did. But the calls from Derek became less frequent. Once a week turned into once every 2 weeks, then once a month. The visits stopped almost entirely. When I did talk to him, he seemed rushed, distracted. He would say Crystal was waiting for him, or they had plans, or he had to go. 3 months before the tornado, I called Derek to invite him and Crystal to my house for Thanksgiving. I had already planned the menu in my head. Turkey with all the trimmings, my famous sweet potato casserole pumpkin pie from scratch. I even thought about setting up the guest room with fresh linens so they could stay overnight. Derek hesitated on the phone. I could hear Crystal's voice in the background, though I could not make out the words. Finally, he said, "Mom, Crystal wants to do Thanksgiving at her place this year, with her friends. I hope you understand." I said I understood. What else could I say? That Thanksgiving I cooked a small turkey for myself. I set the table with the good china, lit a candle, and ate alone. Afterward, I took a picture of the spread and sent it to Derek. He replied 3 hours later with a text message that said, "Looks good, Mom." That was it. 2 words. No phone call. No follow-up questions about how I was doing or whether I was lonely. I told myself it was normal. Young couples want to build their own traditions. Derek was in love, and love makes people do things they would not normally do. He would come around eventually. He was still my son, still the little boy who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms because he was afraid of the noise. I had no idea that in just a few months, everything I believed about my son would be tested in ways I could never have imagined. The day the tornado came started like any other April afternoon in Oklahoma. The sky had that strange greenish tint that locals know all too well. We call it tornado weather. The air was thick and humid, the kind of heaviness that makes your clothes stick to your skin. I was in the kitchen baking brownies for my book club meeting that evening. We were supposed to discuss a novel about a woman who travels across the country to find herself after a divorce. I had dog-eared several pages I wanted to talk about. The book had resonated with me in ways I did not expect. The television was on in the living room, tuned to the local news. I was only half listening, focused on measuring the cocoa powder, when the regular programming was interrupted by an emergency broadcast. The anchor's voice was tense, urgent. A tornado had been spotted near the county line moving northeast. Millbrook was directly in its path. I turned off the oven and walked to the window. The sky had darkened considerably in just the past few minutes. The wind was picking up, bending the trees in my yard at unnatural angles. My rose bushes were whipping back and forth like they were trying to escape from the ground. The sirens started, that long, mournful wail that every Oklahoma resident learns to dread. I had heard it dozens of times over the years, and most of the time the tornado passed by without incident. But something about this time felt different. The air pressure changed so fast that my ears popped. I moved quickly but calmly. After living in tornado country for nearly 6 decades, I knew the drill. I grabbed the lockbox with my important documents, birth certificate, insurance papers, the deed to the house. Then I took the photo album from the coffee table, the one with pictures of Harold and Derek, our wedding. Derek's childhood, the memories that could not be replaced. The basement was my shelter. Harold had reinforced it years ago, adding steel beams and a heavy door. I descended the wooden stairs, my heart beating faster than I wanted to admit. I sat on the old couch we kept down there, clutching the lockbox and album to my chest like a child holding a stuffed animal. The sound came first. It was not like anything you hear in movies. It was deeper, more visceral, like a freight train roaring through your living room. The entire house shook. I heard glass shattering, wood splintering, objects crashing. The lights flickered and went out, leaving me in complete darkness. I pressed myself against the couch and prayed. I prayed to God, to Harold, to anyone who might be listening. I asked them to let me survive this. I was not ready to die. I still had things to do, people to see, a son who might still need me. The roaring lasted about 20 seconds. 20 seconds that felt like 20 years. Then gradually it faded. The shaking stopped. The wind died down to a whisper. I sat in the darkness for a long time, afraid to move. My ears were ringing. My hands were trembling. When I finally found the courage to climb the stairs and push open the basement door, I was not prepared for what I saw. There was no second floor. The entire upper half of my house was gone, ripped away like a lid torn off a jar. Where my bedroom used to be, there was now only open sky gray and swirling with debris. The staircase to the second floor ended abruptly in midair, leading to nothing. The first floor was barely standing. Walls had collapsed inward. The kitchen where I had been baking just minutes ago was exposed to the elements. My oven was still there, covered in plaster and broken glass. The brownie batter was splattered across what remained of the counter. I stepped outside through what used to be the front door. The door itself was gone. I found it later embedded in a tree 200 feet away. My garden was destroyed. The tulips and roses I had nurtured for years were buried under mud and debris. The walkway was cracked and upheaved. The porch where I used to sit and watch the sunset was a pile of broken wood and twisted metal. I walked around to the backyard, my feet moving on autopilot. The oak tree. Harold's beloved oak tree had been uprooted. It lay on its side like a fallen giant, its roots exposed to the sky. The swing Harold built for Derek was crushed beneath the trunk, the rope frayed and tangled. That was when I saw the rocking chair. Harold had made that chair with his own hands when I was pregnant with Derek. He spent weeks sanding the wood, carving the armrests, making sure every joint was perfect. I had rocked Derek to sleep in that chair countless times. After Harold died, I would sit in it whenever I missed him, and somehow I would feel his presence. The chair was lying in the neighbor's yard more than 100 feet from where it should have been. It was broken into several pieces, the wood splintered beyond repair. I walked over and picked up one of the pieces. It was the armrest, the one Harold had carved with a small heart, our initials inside. A and H, forever. I sat down in the mud, holding that piece of wood, and I did not cry. I wanted to, but the tears would not come. I felt empty, hollowed out, like the tornado had taken something from inside me, along with my house. Neighbors began to emerge from their own shelters. Mrs. Patterson came running over, her face streaked with tears. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Other people gathered, surveying the damage, calling out names of loved ones. Emergency vehicles arrived, their sirens adding to the chaos. A volunteer from the Red Cross found me sitting in the mud and gently guided me to the high school, which had been set up as an emergency shelter. They gave me a blanket, a bottle of water, and a cot in the gymnasium. I sat there among dozens of other displaced residents, all of us wearing the same dazed expression. That night, lying on a cot in a high school gymnasium surrounded by strangers, I took out my phone and called Derek. He answered after 5 rings. His voice sounded annoyed, like I had interrupted something important. "Mom, what is it? I'm kinda busy right now." I told him what happened. I told him the house was destroyed, that I had lost almost everything, that I was sleeping in a shelter. I asked if I could come stay with him for a while, just until I figured things out. There was a long pause. I heard Crystal's voice in the background, sharp and questioning. Derek said something to her that I could not make out. Then he came back to the phone. "Mom, I need to talk to Crystal about this. Let me call you back." I waited. 1 hour passed, then 2, then 3. I stared at my phone, willing it to ring. It was past midnight when I finally gave up and tried to sleep. The cot was uncomfortable, the gymnasium was noisy, and my heart was heavier than it had ever been. Derek called the next morning. His voice was tired and strained. "Mom, you can come stay with us for a few days. But just a few days. Okay, Crystal and we need to figure some things out." I thanked him. I told myself that a few days was better than nothing. I told myself that once I got there, once Crystal saw that I was not a burden, everything would be fine. I had never been more wrong about anything in my life. The bus ride from Millbrook to Tulsa took 2 hours. I sat by the window watching the Oklahoma landscape roll by fields and farms and small towns that looked untouched by the storm. It was strange how life could be completely normal, just a few miles away from total destruction. I had one small suitcase with me filled with clothes that had been donated at the shelter. Nothing I owned anymore. Someone else's jeans, someone else's sweaters, someone else's underwear still in the package. The only things that were truly mine were the lockbox with my documents and the photo album I had managed to save. When I arrived at the bus station in Tulsa, Derek was waiting for me. He looked thinner than the last time I saw him, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He hugged me briefly, more out of obligation than affection, and grabbed my suitcase. "Crystal is at work," he said as we walked to his car. "She will be home around 6. I nodded and did not say anything. I was too exhausted to make conversation. Derek's apartment was in a high-rise building in downtown Tulsa. The lobby had marble floors and a doorman who nodded at us as we passed. The elevator was sleek and silent. Everything about the place screamed money and modernity. The apartment itself was on the 12th floor. When Derek opened the door, I stepped into a space that felt like a magazine advertisement. White leather sofa, glass coffee table, abstract paintings on the walls that looked like someone had thrown paint at a canvas and called it art. The kitchen had stainless steel appliances and granite countertops. There was not a single family photo anywhere. "Nice place," I said, trying to sound genuine. "Crystal decorated it," Derek replied. "She has good taste." He showed me around. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small balcony with a view of the city. The second bedroom, he explained, was Crystal's home office. She worked from home some days and needed a dedicated space. "So where will I sleep?" I asked. Derek pointed to the sofa. "The couch pulls out. I already put sheets on it." I looked at the pristine white sofa and imagined myself sleeping on it, an intruder in this carefully curated space. But I smiled and thanked him. Beggars cannot be choosers, as my mother used to say. Crystal came home at 6:30. She was wearing a tailored dress and high heels, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She greeted me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Anne, I am so sorry about your house. That must have been terrifying." "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate you letting me stay here." Crystal's smile flickered. "Of course. Family helps family." But the way she said it made me feel like she was reciting a line from a script. Dinner that night was takeout sushi. Crystal said she did not cook, and Derek was too tired after work. I sat at the dining table picking at raw fish I did not particularly enjoy, while Crystal talked about her job, her colleagues, a promotion she was hoping to get. "What about you, Anne?" she asked at one point. "What are your plans?" "I am going to call the insurance company tomorrow," I said. "See how long it will take to process my claim. And I am looking into some government assistance programs for tornado victims." Crystal nodded slowly. "That sounds smart. The sooner you get that sorted, the better." There was an implication in her words that I chose to ignore. The first few days were awkward but bearable. I tried to make myself useful. I woke up early before Derek and Crystal and made coffee. I tidied the apartment, wiped down counters, washed dishes. I even offered to cook dinner, but Crystal said she preferred to order in. I spent most of my time on the phone. The insurance company told me that processing claims after a natural disaster could take 3 to 6 months. There were thousands of claims to handle, and mine was in the queue. I asked if there was any way to expedite it. The representative said she would make a note in my file but could not promise anything. I called FEMA and registered for disaster assistance. They said someone would be in touch within 2 weeks. I called the local housing authority to ask about temporary housing for seniors. They put me on a waiting list. Every conversation ended the same way. "Wait. Be patient. These things take time." But time was the one thing I did not have. On the 5th day, I asked Derek if I could stay a little longer. Just a few more weeks until the insurance started to move or FEMA came through. I promised I would stay out of the way, help with chores, whatever they needed. Derek looked uncomfortable. "Let me talk to Crystal," he said. That night, I heard them arguing in the bedroom. Crystal's voice was sharp and angry. I could not make out all the words, but I heard enough. Your mother, or my space. Not what I signed up for. The conversation lasted about an hour. When Derek finally came out to the living room, his face was pale. He sat down on the armchair across from me, avoiding my eyes. Mom, he said slowly. Crystal and I talked. We want privacy. She does not want you here. She says it is affecting our relationship. I felt like I had been slapped. Derek, I am your mother. I lost everything. I just need a little more time. I know, Mom. I know. He rubbed his face with his hands. But Crystal is my girlfriend. I live with her. I have to consider her feelings too. You are choosing her over me. Derek finally looked at me. There was guilt in his eyes, but also something else. Resignation. I am not choosing anyone. I am just asking you to find somewhere else to stay. There are shelters programs. You said yourself that FEMA is going to help. Derek, FEMA could take weeks. The shelters are overcrowded. Where am I supposed to go? He did not answer. He just sat there looking at the floor. I stood up and walked to the bathroom. I closed the door, turned on the faucet, and let the tears come. I cried harder than I had cried since Harold's funeral. I cried for my house, for my garden, for the rocking chair that could never be repaired. But mostly I cried for my son, the boy I had raised, the man who was now telling me I was not welcome in his home. When I came out of the bathroom, my eyes red and swollen, I told Derek I would leave in the morning. He nodded, looking relieved. That night, I could not sleep. I lay on the pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had come to this. I had done everything right. I had been a good mother, a devoted wife, a productive member of society. And now, I was 58 years old, homeless, and unwanted. Around 2 a.m, I reached for my purse. I did not know what I was looking for, just something to hold on to. My fingers found my wallet and I opened it, flipping past credit cards and old receipts. Behind my insurance card, there was a small piece of paper folded and yellowed with age. I unfolded it carefully. Written in faded pencil was a phone number. Beneath it in handwriting I recognized instantly were the words, "Call me if you ever need anything. W. Walter." I had not thought about Walter in years, decades even. He was my high school sweetheart, the first boy I ever loved. We dated senior year, made plans for the future, talked about getting married someday. But my father did not approve. Walter's family was poor, he said. Walter had no prospects. I deserved better. My father sent me to a college 3 states away and forbade me from contacting Walter. I was young and scared and did not know how to stand up to him. So I wrote Walter a goodbye letter, kept his phone number as a memento, and tried to move on with my life. I met Harold in college. He was kind and steady, and came from a family my father approved of. I loved him, truly, loved him, even if it was a different kind of love than what I had felt for Walter. We built a good life together. Over the years I heard bits and pieces about Walter through mutual acquaintances. He did not go to college. He started working at an auto repair shop. Then he opened his own shop, then another. Somewhere along the line he built an empire of auto parts stores across the Midwest. People said he was worth millions. I never reached out to him. I was married, happy, living my own life. What would be the point? But now, sitting in my son's apartment at 2 a.m, holding that faded piece of paper, I wondered if fate had kept this number in my wallet for a reason. I picked up my phone and dialed before I could talk myself out of it. It rang once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. I was about to hang up when someone answered. Hello? The voice was deep and groggy with sleep. Walter. My own voice came out as a whisper. This is Anne. Anne from Jefferson High. I do not know if you remember me. Silence. I held my breath. Then, Annie. Is this really you? The nickname hit me like a wave. No one had called me Annie in 35 years. Yes, I said, my voice cracking. It is me. My God. I heard rustling like he was sitting up in bed. I never thought I would hear your voice again. Are you okay? Is something wrong? And so I told him. I told him everything. The tornado, the destruction, Derek Crystal, the couch I was sleeping on in an apartment where I was not wanted. I did not ask for anything. I just needed someone to talk to, someone who might actually listen. Walter listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Annie," he said finally. "I live in Oklahoma City now. It is about an hour from Tulsa. I have a guest house on my property that nobody uses. You are welcome to stay there as long as you need. No strings attached. Just an old friend helping another old friend." I felt tears welling up again. "Walter, I cannot accept that. I do not want you to think I called because of your money." He laughed softly. "Annie, you called me at 2 in the morning. If you wanted my money, you would have called during business hours. You called because you needed a friend. And that is exactly what I am offering." I wanted to argue, but I was too tired and too desperate. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything. I will drive to Tulsa tomorrow and pick you up. Just text me the address." "Thank you, Walter. I do not know how to repay you." "You do not have to repay anything. Just get some rest. I will see you in the morning." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness for a long time. For the first time since the tornado, I felt something I had almost forgotten. Hope. The next morning, I packed my small suitcase and wrote a note for Derek. I kept it simple. "Thank you for letting me stay. I have found another place. Take care of yourself. Love, Mom." I did not write anything about being hurt or disappointed. There was no point. Actions speak louder than words, and Derek's actions had said everything. Walter arrived at 11. He drove a dark blue pickup truck, clean, but not flashy. When he stepped out, I recognized him instantly, even after all these years. He was taller than I remembered, his hair silver now, instead of brown, but his eyes were the same, warm and kind like sunlight on water. He walked up to me and stopped a few feet away, like he was not sure how to greet me. I solved the problem by stepping forward and hugging him. It was an awkward hug, the kind between two people who used to know each other intimately, but are now practically strangers. "It is good to see you, Annie," he said. "You too, Walter. You look well." He picked up my suitcase and opened the truck door for me. As we drove out of Tulsa, I looked back at Derek's apartment building rising into the sky like a monument to everything I had lost. "Tell me about your life," Walter said as we merged onto the highway. "Everything that happened after you left." So I told him. I told him about college, about Harold, about Derek. I told him about my years as a teacher, about my garden, about the quiet contentment of a simple life. He listened attentively, asking questions, nodding at the right moments. When I finished, he told me about his life. The struggle of the early years, working 2 jobs while trying to save enough money to open his own shop. His marriage to a woman named Linda, who died in a car accident 12 years ago. They never had children, something he regretted. After Linda passed, he said, "I threw myself into work, built the business bigger than I ever imagined, made more money than I could ever spend. But it was lonely, Annie. All the success in the world does not mean much when you have no one to share it with." I reached over and touched his arm. "I am sorry about Linda." "Thank you. She was a good woman. I like to think she would approve of what I am doing now." "What do you mean?" He glanced at me with a small smile. "Helping an old friend who needs it. Linda was always big on kindness. She would have insisted I do this." When we arrived at Walter's property, I could not believe my eyes. The main house was a large but understated ranch-style home surrounded by acres of green lawn and mature oak trees. Behind it, connected by a stone pathway, was the guest house. It was charming. A small cottage with a wraparound porch, flower boxes in the windows, and a red front door. Inside there were 2 bedrooms, a cozy living room, a full kitchen, and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. Everything was clean and bright and welcoming. "This is yours for as long as you need it," Walter said. "The fridge is stocked. There is a car in the garage if you need to go anywhere, and I am just a 2-minute walk away if you need anything at all." I turned to him overwhelmed. "Walter, this is too much." "No," he said firmly. "This is exactly enough." That night, I took a long bath in the clawfoot tub, the first real bath I had taken since before the tornado. I put on clean pajamas, climbed into a real bed with soft sheets and fluffy pillows, and slept for 12 hours straight. For the first time in weeks, I did not dream about destruction. The days that followed were a revelation. For the first time in my life, I had space to breathe, to think, to simply exist without feeling like a burden. Walter was true to his word. He gave me privacy, never dropping by unannounced or hovering over me. But every evening around 6, he would walk over from the main house and knock on my door asking if I needed anything. Sometimes I would invite him in for tea and we would talk for hours. Other times I would simply thank him and return to whatever I was doing. I spent my days getting my affairs in order. I called the insurance company daily, following up on my claim, pushing for updates. I contacted FEMA and moved through their bureaucratic maze one step at a time. I researched programs for tornado victims, applying for every form of assistance I qualified for. It was slow, frustrating work, but I was no longer doing it from a shelter cot or a stranger's couch. I had a home base, a place to spread out paperwork, a phone that was always charged, internet access to research and apply for things. It made all the difference. About 2 weeks after I arrived, Walter invited me to dinner at the main house. He cooked himself a simple but delicious meal of grilled chicken and roasted vegetables. We ate at his dining table, which was far too large for just 2 people. "Annie," he said between bites, "I want to propose something, and I want you to hear me out before you say no." I set down my fork. "I am listening." "I want to help you rebuild your house in Millbrook. Not give you money, but lend it to you. 0 interest. You pay me back when the insurance comes through or whenever you are able. No pressure, no timeline." I shook my head immediately. "Walter, I cannot accept that." "Why not?" "Because it is too much. Because we barely know each other anymore. Because I do not want to take advantage of your kindness." Walter leaned back in his chair. "Annie, can I tell you something? After you left all those years ago, I was devastated. I thought my life was over, but it forced me to work harder than I ever would have otherwise. In a strange way, losing you was the best thing that ever happened to me professionally. It gave me something to prove." "Walter, I am so sorry about how things ended. My father, he was a difficult man. I was too young to stand up to him. I know. I understood that even back then. I was never angry at you, Annie. Just sad." He paused. "The point is, I have more money than I could ever spend. I have no children to leave it to. Helping you rebuild your home would give me more satisfaction than buying another property or another car. Please let me do this." I sat with his words for a long moment. My pride wanted to refuse. But my practical side, the side that had spent weeks navigating the nightmare of disaster recovery, knew that his offer could save me months of uncertainty. "If I accept," I said slowly, "I am paying back every cent." Walter smiled. "I would not expect anything less." We shook hands across the table like we were sealing a business deal. And in a way we were. But it felt like something more, too. It felt like the beginning of something I could not yet define. Over the following weeks, Walter connected me with a reputable construction company that specialized in rebuilding homes after natural disasters. I worked with their architect to design my new house. It would be smaller than the original, just 1 story, easier for me to maintain as I got older. But it would have everything I needed: a comfortable bedroom, a functional kitchen, a living room with big windows, and a front porch where I could sit and watch the sunset just like before. The front yard would have space for a new garden. I was already planning what to plant. Tulips and roses, of course, but also some new varieties. A fresh start deserved fresh flowers. While the construction was being planned, I found ways to make myself useful. I learned that there was a tutoring program at the local library for children who were struggling with reading. I volunteered 3 afternoons a week working with kids aged 6 to 10, helping them sound out words and discover the magic of stories. It reminded me of my teaching days, the joy of watching a child's face light up when something finally clicked. I also joined a women's group at the community center. We met every Thursday for coffee and conversation. Some were widows like me, others were divorced, others had never married. What we had in common was our strength, our resilience, our determination to keep moving forward no matter what life threw at us. Walter and I grew closer. We fell into a comfortable routine: breakfast together on weekends, evening walks around his property, long conversations about everything from politics to philosophy to our favorite television shows. He made me laugh. I had forgotten how good it felt to laugh. One evening, as we sat on my porch watching fireflies dance in the dusk, Walter asked me if I had heard from Derek. "Not a word," I said. "Not since I left his apartment." "Does that bother you?" I considered the question. It did at first. I kept checking my phone, hoping he would call, hoping he would apologize. But somewhere along the way I stopped checking. I realized that I could not control his choices. I could only control my own. Walter nodded slowly. "That is a wise perspective." "It is not wisdom," I said. "It is survival." 2 months after I moved into the guest house, my phone rang. It was Derek. His voice sounded different, smaller somehow, less certain. "Mom, it is Derek." "Hello, Derek. How are you? Where are you living now?" "I am fine. I am staying with an old friend in Oklahoma City." There was a pause. "Crystal and I broke up." I waited for more, but he did not elaborate. Finally, I asked, "What happened?" She met someone else, some guy from her office. They have been seeing each other for months, apparently. She moved out last week." I felt a strange mix of emotions: satisfaction that Crystal was gone, sadness for my son despite everything, and underneath it all, a weary sort of vindication. "I am sorry, Derek." "Yeah." Another pause. "Mom, I am sorry too. About how I treated you. About making you leave. I was wrong. Crystal, she got in my head and I let her. I should have stood up for you." "Yes," I said quietly. "You should have. Can we? I do not know. Can we start over? I miss you, Mom." I took a deep breath. "I miss you too, Derek. But starting over is not that simple. You hurt me deeply. It is going to take time for me to trust you again." "I understand. I will do whatever it takes." "Then let us take it slow. Call me next week. We can talk more then." "Okay. Okay. I will do that. Thank you, Mom." After we hung up, I sat on my porch for a long time watching the sunset. I was not angry at Derek anymore, but I was not ready to pretend that nothing had happened either. He had shown me who he was in a crisis, and that was something I would not forget. A month later, Derek drove down to Oklahoma City to visit me. We had lunch at a little cafe in town, just the two of us. He looked older, worn down, like the breakup had aged him. "I have been doing a lot of thinking," he said over coffee. "About Crystal, about you, about the person I have become. I do not like what I see, Mom. I let a woman manipulate me into abandoning my own mother. What kind of man does that?" "A man who got lost," I said gently, "but also a man who can find his way back." Derek's eyes grew wet. "I do not deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not, but that is not why I'm giving it to you. I am forgiving you because holding on to anger does not hurt you, Derek. It hurts me, and I am tired of hurting." He reached across the table and took my hand. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, Derek. I always have. I always will." After lunch, Derek came to see the guest house. He met Walter, and I watched carefully as they shook hands. Derek was polite but guarded. Walter was warm but respectful of the tension. "Thank you for taking care of my mom," Derek said to Walter. Walter shook his head. "Your mom does not need anyone to take care of her. She takes care of herself. I just provided a place to stay." Derek looked at me, and I saw something new in his eyes. Respect. Not the casual respect of a son for a mother, but something deeper. The respect of a man for a woman who had survived. Before he left, Derek hugged me tight. "I am going to be better," he whispered. "I promise." "I know you will," I said. "I believe in you." I watched his car disappear down the road, and I felt something shift inside me. For months I had been grieving the relationship I thought I had with my son. Now, standing in the afternoon sunlight, I realized that maybe we could build something better. Not the same as before, but stronger, more honest, based on mutual respect rather than obligation. It would take time. It would take effort. But for the first time, I believed it was possible. The construction of my new house in Millbrook took 6 months. I drove out every few weeks to check on the progress, watching the foundation being poured, the walls going up, the roof being laid. Each visit filled me with a mixture of anticipation and bittersweet nostalgia. The old house was gone. Every trace of it had been cleared away. But as the new structure took shape, I realized that a house is not just wood and nails and glass. It is the life you build within its walls. On the day I got the keys, Walter drove me to Millbrook. Derek met us there, having taken the day off from work. The three of us stood in front of the house looking at my new beginning. It was smaller than the original, just as I had planned. One story painted a soft gray with white trim. The front porch had a new swing, a gift from Walter. The windows were large and let in plenty of light. The front yard was bare earth waiting to be transformed. Inside, the rooms were empty but full of potential. I walked through, slowly imagining where I would put the furniture, where I would hang pictures, where I would set up my reading nook. The kitchen had a window overlooking the backyard where I could watch birds while I did dishes. Derek presented me with his gift, a framed photograph of me, Harold, and Derek when Derek was 10 years old. It had been damaged in the tornado, but carefully restored. "I had it fixed," Derek said. "I thought you might want it for your new place." I hugged him, tears streaming down my face. "It is perfect. Thank you." Walter's gift was in the backyard, a young oak tree about 6 feet tall, freshly planted. "I know it will take years to grow," he said, "but someday it will be as big as the one you lost. Maybe someone will hang a swing from it." I stood looking at that little tree, thinking about time and growth and the things we plant for future generations. Harold would have loved this tree. He would have seen its potential, just like he always saw mine. The move-in took a full day. Walter and Derek helped carry boxes, assemble furniture, hang curtains. By evening, the house was starting to feel like a home. Not the same as before, but mine. My neighbor Margaret, the widow from next door, came over with a casserole and a bottle of wine. We sat on my new porch, watching the stars come out, talking about everything and nothing. "It is good to have you back, Anne," she said. "The neighborhood was not the same without you." "It is good to be back," I replied. And I meant it. Over the following months, I settled into my new life. I planted my garden, starting with tulips and roses, adding lavender and marigolds for variety. I joined the local book club again. I continued volunteering at the library in Oklahoma City, making the drive once a week. Walter and I remained close. He would drive to Millbrook every weekend, or I would drive to Oklahoma City. Sometimes we would just sit and read in the same room, content in each other's company. Other times we would explore new restaurants or take day trips to places neither of us had been. One evening after dinner at my house, Walter asked me a question I had been expecting. "Annie, I know this might seem fast, and I want you to know there is no pressure at all. But I was wondering if you would ever consider if we could maybe be more than friends." I looked at him, this man who had re-entered my life at its lowest point and helped me rebuild without asking for anything in return. I cared for him deeply, but I also knew myself. "Walter, I am not sure I am ready for that. After everything that has happened, I am still figuring out who I am on my own. I spent so many years being someone's wife, someone's mother. For the first time, I am just Anne. I need to be okay with that before I can be part of something else." He nodded, no trace of disappointment on his face. "I understand completely. and it does not change anything between us. I am here however you need me. You are a good man, Walter. And you are an extraordinary woman, Annie. Whatever happens, I am grateful to have you in my life again. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching the fireflies dance over my new garden. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, that uncertainty did not scare me. It felt like possibility. Derek and I continued to rebuild our relationship. He came to visit once a month, sometimes staying overnight in my spare bedroom. He learned to cook his father's pot roast recipe, the one I had taught him years ago, and he had forgotten. We talked about Harold, about the past, about the future. Slowly, carefully, we found our way back to each other. One Sunday, as we sat on my porch after lunch, Derek said something that surprised me. "Mom, I have been thinking about what you said about respecting yourself, about not letting people treat you poorly. I have been trying to apply that to my own life." "How so?" "I quit my job, the one at the insurance company. My boss was terrible, always putting me down, taking credit for my work. I stayed because I thought I needed the stability. But after seeing how you stood up for yourself, I realized that stability is not worth sacrificing your dignity." I felt a surge of pride. "What are you going to do now?" "I got a new job, different company, less money at first, but a better environment. And I am looking into going back to school, maybe getting my MBA. I want to build something like you built your life after the tornado." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "Your father would be proud of you." "You think so?" "I know so." A year after the tornado, I sat on my front porch at sunset, a cup of tea in my hands. The tulips were blooming, the roses were budding, and the little oak tree in the backyard had sprouted new leaves. Life was not perfect, but it was good. It was mine. I thought about everything I had lost, the house I had lived in for 30 years, the possessions I had accumulated over a lifetime, the relationship I thought I had with my son, the belief that family would always be there for me. But I also thought about everything I had gained: a new home built exactly to my specifications, a renewed friendship with a man who saw my worth when my own son could not, a deeper, more honest relationship with Derek, a community of friends and neighbors, a sense of myself as an independent woman who could survive anything. The tornado had taken everything from me, but in losing everything I had found something I did not know I had lost: myself. If you had told me 2 years ago that a tornado would be the best thing that ever happened to me, I would have thought you were crazy. How could losing everything be a blessing? How could being rejected by your own child lead to happiness? But life has a strange way of working out. In the beginning, after the storm, I was consumed by grief and fear. I mourned my house like it was a living thing. I raged at Derek for his betrayal. I felt sorry for myself lying on that cot in the shelter, wondering what I had done to deserve such suffering. But somewhere along the way, the grief transformed into something else: clarity. I realized that I had been living my life for other people for as long as I could remember. As a daughter, I did what my father told me. As a wife, I supported Harold's dreams. As a mother, I put Derek's needs before my own. I was always Anne the teacher, Anne the widow, Anne the mother. Never just Anne. The tornado stripped all of that away. It left me with nothing but myself. And for the first time, I had to figure out who that person was. I discovered that I am stronger than I ever knew. I can ask for help without losing my pride. I can forgive without forgetting. I can love without losing myself. I can start over at 58 and build a life that is entirely my own. Derek and I are in a good place now. Not perfect, but good. He calls me every week and we talk honestly about our lives. He is growing, changing, becoming the man I always knew he could be. I do not hold the past against him anymore. We all make mistakes. The measure of a person is not whether they fall, but whether they get back up. Walter remains my closest friend. We have not taken our relationship to a romantic level, and I am not sure we ever will. But what we have is precious. Two people who knew each other in youth found each other again in age and discovered that the connection between them had only deepened with time. He taught me that accepting help is not weakness, it is wisdom. As for Crystal, I do not know what happened to her, and I do not care. She was a chapter in Derek's life, not in mine. I wish her well wherever she is. Holding on to bitterness only poisons the person who holds it. My new house is small, but it is full of love. The walls are covered with photographs, old and new. Harold smiles at me from above the fireplace. Derek and I grin from a recent photo taken at a restaurant in Tulsa. There is even a picture of Walter and me at a county fair, both of us holding cotton candy like teenagers. The garden is thriving. Every morning I walk through it with my coffee, checking on the flowers, pulling the occasional weed. It is not as elaborate as my old garden, but it brings me the same peace. Maybe even more because I built it from nothing. The oak tree is growing. It has doubled in size since Walter planted it. Someday, maybe years from now, it will be tall and strong enough to hold a swing. Maybe my grandchildren will play on it if Derek ever has kids. Or maybe it will just stand there, a testament to hope and renewal long after I am gone. I learned something important through all of this. Life can take away everything you have. Your home, your security, your relationships, even your faith in the people you love. But there is one thing life cannot take, unless you let it: your strength. I am 59 years old now. I have survived loss and betrayal and natural disaster. I have been knocked down and gotten back up. I have cried more tears than I can count and laughed more than I ever expected to laugh again. And I am still standing. If you are going through something difficult right now, if you feel like the world has turned against you, if the people you love have let you down, I want you to know something. You are stronger than you think. You have survived every bad day you have ever had. You can survive this one too. Ask for help when you need it. There is no shame in that. Forgive the people who hurt you, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. And most importantly, never forget your own worth. You are valuable, you are capable, and you are loved. Even if it does not feel that way right now. I almost called this the worst chapter of my life. Now I call it the beginning of my best chapter. If I can make it through, so can you. I believe in you. Now I would love to hear from you. Have you ever been let down by someone you trusted completely? What helped you move forward? Please share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched your heart or made you think, please give it a like. It helps more people find these stories, and it lets me know that sharing my journey was worth it. If you want to hear more stories about resilience, family, and finding strength when everything falls apart, make sure to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And please share this video with someone who might need to hear it. You never know who in your life is going through their own tornado right now and could use a reminder that better days are coming. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And thank you for caring. Take care of yourselves. You deserve kindness, especially from the person in the mirror. Until next time.